In order to live an extraordinary and abundant life, you must focus on your internal battle and win within. My name is Randy Wilson, and welcome to the Rich Mind Podcast. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Rich Mind Podcast. And today we're going to be wrapping up the 6-part mini-series discussing the 13 principles of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. I've pulled out 6 of those success principles that have been the biggest impact on my life, that I wanted to share some stories along with those principles, but then share what they've meant to me and hopefully help you as we close out the year of 2024 and begin moving into the year of 2025. So depending on when you're catching this, whether it's in real time or in the future, these principles can be applied at any time. If you're in the process of developing your own personal development, if you're in the process of trying to work towards becoming the version of yourself that you know is possible, these principles are timeless. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be listening to them in real time. They will be valuable to you now, and they will also be valuable to you in the future, which is why I'm super excited. So if you're just catching this, if this is the first part that you've caught, I would recommend you go back to the previous 5 principles that we've discussed up to this point. Each one kind of stacks on top of the other. You will see that they are woven together, meaning they're not in any there's not any one form of importance or one level of importance. They are all very important. They all stand alone on their own as great principles, but at the same time, when you combine them together, that's what gives them the superpower, and that will give you the superpower to go out and achieve a life that you truly desire, which is exactly what I'm trying to help you do here on the Rich Mind Podcast, which is why I'm super excited. So let's dive into that last principle today, number 6. From Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And that principle is going the extra mile. Now, it doesn't literally mean going out and running a mile or walking further or physically doing anything other than adding more value to your potential client, or you can be in a W-2 job. It can be your employer. It's going the extra mile. It's doing a little bit above and beyond what's expected. I feel, and I used to be this way as well. I'll be honest with you. When I was in my first early years of my W-2 working career or working life, a lot of times I was falling into the trap of thinking, okay, what is it in it for me? If I do this, I should receive, or I feel like I deserve something else in return, versus simply doing something out of generosity, doing something out of knowing that if I continuously show up to do more than I'm expected, that will come back to me greater in abundance moving forward. And that's a mindset shift. That's one thing that I was not necessarily taught when I was growing up. I've had to discover on my own. In the previous episode, I talked about getting a result. Well, this is a big result that has been that way for me. I've had to train myself and learn how to show up to give, show up to add value to you, the listener here on the podcast, or any other area of my life as well. So when I discovered this, when I was even in my W-2 working career, I started to do that more with the customers that I had, even with the employees or the other people that I was working with. I would show up to try to figure out different ways to add more value into their life. And that's what I want to encourage you to do moving forward here today. So one thing I've had to discover on my own is that if you want to be in business, if you want to offer a product or service out in the marketplace, you've got to learn how to add as much value as you possibly can to the marketplace before you can ever expect to receive something in return. I feel like a lot of times we are out to get things, whether it's money or whether it's stuff, whether it's things. But when you flip that on its head and you start to begin that or realize that it's the value you need to add to the marketplace first. Like I said, you can test this out if you're in a working environment. Go to work, set a goal that you're going to do something specific, just helping folks, right? Offer some assistance to people and do it without having any expectation of receiving anything in return. Just get in the habit of giving without the expectation of receiving. And I promise you, if you do that consistently, and if you do that with an open heart, meaning you're doing that because you want to, not because you feel like you have to, you will then begin to see different opportunities will begin to show up. It's really an amazing thing. I've had to discover this for myself, which is why I wanted to leave this here as the last success principle for you here today, because I think it could make the biggest impact moving yourself forward if you want to jump out into the entrepreneurial world, begin to add value, begin to show up, begin to give without the idea of receiving anything in return. So how have I implemented this in my current life? So I keep referring back to the podcast. And so I'm going to do that here again today. The podcast right now, I'm not necessarily generating anything from the podcast. I'm doing it because I'm trying to get the result. We talked about getting a result in the previous episode. I'm doing it because I'm trying to gain a result. I'm trying to add value. I'm trying to get good at the craft of showing up, hitting record, talking into the camera, having a thought or an idea, and then being able to verbalize that in the best way that I possibly can. I'm trying to get good at the craft of communication through video, through audio. And to do that, I'm doing it for free. I'm basically offering this content, things that I've learned. Hopefully you're finding value in them, trying to implement and share different stories to help try to solidify some of the ideas and the concepts that you've seen me work through some of these concepts on my own, bringing on guests, finding people to add value through their own stories. I'm trying to do different things like that with the Rich Mind podcast and doing that without expecting anything in return. And what I will tell you is that since I've done that consistently, I've been persistent. That goes back into the first principle we talked about. Because I've been persistent and I've kept moving forward, different opportunities are starting to show themselves, which is super exciting. I didn't have any expectation of what those were. We talked about having the definiteness of purpose. And so I had an idea, but I wasn't sure. So I've had to step into faith, knowing that I just needed to keep moving forward. I needed to keep adding value. I needed to keep pushing the envelope of my own comfort zones, right? Knowing that I was going to be hitting some resistance levels, which is I have many, many times, but I keep moving forward, keep trying to pivot, never stopping. A lot of the things we've talked about in these 6 steps or 6 principles so far up to this last one, number 6. So just the idea, I want you to get the concept of going the extra mile. Where in your life, whether it's at home, at work, your business, where can you go the extra mile to just make that extra little touch, a positive touch in somebody's life? It can be a message you send to somebody. It can be a door you open for somebody. It can be simple things. It can be hitting record and beginning your own podcast and offering your value to the marketplace. It can be all sorts of things. And that's what I want to encourage you to start thinking about and doing as we move into the new year, which is what I'm super excited for here for you today. So last thing here, I want to share with you, got some great things. I've mentioned several times here about the podcast, some great things coming here in 2025, a big pivot happening on actually the next episode after this one. I'm actually going to be bringing on a co-host of the podcast, and we're going to start diving into more deeper topics of exactly helping you step into the entrepreneurial world. If you're looking for ways to become and leave the W-2 world behind, and start offering value to the marketplace. If you're looking to potentially start and create a brand, create a podcast, start offering products and services, get that result that we talked about in the previous episode as well. That's the pivot we're about ready to make on the Rich Mind podcast. You can head over today. You can head over to richmind.co, and you're going to start seeing some of the things that we are starting to implement in the background. And we're super excited to bring that on. I'm not going to name who the co-host is today, but I will tell you that it's going to be in the next episode. We're going to bring him on and we're going to introduce him to the world. He's been a friend of the podcast. It'll be somebody you have probably heard before. So that's a little bit of a teaser, I guess. But at the same time, yeah, super excited to have the dialogue. We look at life similarly, but we don't have the same beliefs, which is kind of what I wanted. I wanted to have more of a dialogue. I don't want it to be an interview. I want it to be a dialogue. We're going to pick specific topics that I think will resonate with you. If you have the inkling to become an entrepreneur, if you want to learn how to market, if you want to learn how to get your message crafted and out there in the marketplace, that's the kind of discussions that we're going to have here on the Rich Mind podcast for this next pivot. I've talked about pivoting many times, and I'm trying to do as much as I can in the background, as well as producing content just like this little mini series like we just have gotten through, but then also the content moving forward. If you found value in this series, if you wouldn't mind sharing it with your family and friends, I would greatly appreciate that. But definitely let us know how we're doing and how we can help improve your life, help you achieve the great things that you aspire to achieve in your life. We're looking forward to doing that. That's the whole mission with the Rich Mind podcast moving forward. So go out there, have a fantastic day. I look forward to coming back with my co-host in the next episode. Until then, bye now. Thank you for joining me on the Rich Mind podcast. And remember, your external world is a reflection of what's going on inside of you. So focus every day on that internal battle and win within. Until next time, my friends.